Welcome back. Its media are under complete state control and its government has been dubbed the world's worst violator of press freedom by the media rights body Reporters Without Borders. But in spite of rare international media access, North Korea continues to hit the headlines across the world with speculation about the health of its leader Kim Jong-il and international condemnation of its nuclear missile tests. But what do the foreign media really know about this most secretive of countries, and how do they get their information? The Listening Post's Meenakshi Ravi now on a state that tries to dictate every aspect of its media image.
Sorry to disturb your holiday weekend, everybody, but it appears that North Korea has successfully detonated a nuclear weapon.
Yesterday, the communist state threatened to end all relations with South Korea.
The U.S. and its allies believe the North Koreans may soon test-fire a long-range missile.
North Korea really is concerned about its image around the world, and that almost sounds paradoxical because they engage in all of these provocative acts, some of which are abhorrent.
And what North Korea has done in 2009 alone has certainly drawn the ire of Western leaders and made headlines across international media, whether intentional or not.
We tend to call North Korea reclusive. But what's reclusive about a country that stages a nuclear test that is as powerful as a medium-strength earthquake, and then today, just in case we weren't paying attention, fires a brace of missiles into the Sea of Japan?
Earlier this year, the country announced its intention to launch a satellite into orbit. The US and South Korea were skeptical. They said it was not a satellite launch, but a missile test.
The North Koreans said from the outset this missile launch was intended to put a satellite into space, but it came off as an international warning shot and a serious threat to global security.
But as always, with North Korea closed off to the rest of the world, the event was cloaked in secrecy and speculation.
One of the main problems with North Korea is how do you get confirmation of information like this? In this instance, though, the initial suspicion of the nuclear explosion was put out by the South Korean media, and that was confirmed several hours later by the North.
And in June, North Korea was back in the headlines when two American journalists, Laura Ling and Una Lee, were arrested and sentenced to 12 years hard labor for entering the country illegally. U.S. media saw this as another provocative act.
The sum total of all North Korean reports about the trial is zip.
Is it possible that they have been taken for no other reasons than as to serve as pawns?
What really has caught people's attention is the detention and the sentencing of the two reporters, because that's very, very personal. And so I think North Korea may find that although in their view the sentencings of the two women is not as important as other events, this is something that will really drive home the nature of regime to people not only in the United States but around the world.
North Korea's 60th anniversary celebrations last year drew international attention back to the country. For the global media, it was a case of, what's wrong with this picture? There was no sign of North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-il.
The mysterious leader of one of the world's most mysterious countries is now missing from view.
A Japanese expert on North Korea claims the country's leader, Kim Jong-il, died of diabetes back in 2003.
Well, I think you always get a cult or a mythology surrounding someone in the absence of hard facts, and I think this has led to the media rumours about his whereabouts.
Kim Jong-il did eventually appear in public in early July, but with no information from the North Korean media, speculation grew about his health and the possibility of his succession.
A South Korean TV station reports that North Korean leader Kim Jong-il has pancreatic cancer.
Change is coming to North Korea, where leader Kim Jong-il has reportedly told top officials to pledge loyalty to his youngest son.
Inevitably, if there's a great deal of secrecy in the state, news is going to be controlled and rumor is going to be very powerful.
When it comes to reporting North Korea, sorting out the propaganda, both from inside and outside the country, is made more difficult by an almost complete lack of access.
Each filming is closely monitored. It is forbidden to film this propaganda village.
Clearly, the North Koreans are very suspicious of journalists. They think that all journalists are spies. Essentially, they don't allow journalists in unless they're very, very tightly controlled. And most journalists will be shown the monuments, if you like, of the main city, Pyongyang.
Mr. Kim and Mr. Chung, our guides from the North Korean government, were always lending a helpful hand.
So when stories about North Korea make it into the global media, how do they get there?
we have to take into account what reports we're getting from neighbouring countries, and here I'm speaking of the South Korean news agency, Japanese sources and even Chinese sources. Things are happening under the surface and information is coming out.
South Korea obviously has a fundamentally important role in disseminating news about North Korea. Most of the information or the news that we get from North Korea is usually released first on the Yonhap news agency, closely allied to the South Korean government.
And it's not only the Yonhap news agency, it's also the Korean think tanks and the Korean universities, where many of the world's Korean watchers are located. So from what they say, it shapes views about North Korea in the United States and elsewhere.
But what are North Koreans watching and hearing? Almost nothing that their government doesn't approve of.
Well, the first thing to remember is that the media in North Korea is very strictly controlled by the state. Not everyone has access to TVs. When it comes to the internet, it's really just reserved for the elite.
There is absolutely no access in North Korea to outside media whatsoever. It's illegal to listen to foreign radio stations, even if you're able to pick them up. It is, not surprisingly, called the Hermit Kingdom, and for very good reason.
More Global Village Voices now on the media and its reporting of North Korea.
Kim Jong-il is quite happy to let the West perceive him as a rogue state through weapons tests, through the bad news that he receives. It all works rather well. The media get a story that they want, a negative one. Meanwhile, back home, Kim Jong-il gets the story that he wants, one where he can be a world force and push other nations around. He's a president with plenty of access to the Western media, and if he wishes to address it, he would. The fact is, he doesn't wish to address it.
The North Korean government controls its image in the Western media the old-fashioned way. They make it very difficult for the Western media to enter the country. It's restrictions like this that have allowed North Korea to preserve a very authoritarian and Stalinist system that limits Western media's ability to report on what life is really like in North Korea.
When I went there in 2007 with a group of American journalists, we had to leave all newspapers and video equipment behind at the border. We were told that certain topics would be off limits. Mostly, these were any topics that any journalist would be interested in. We were told not to mention the dear leader, and assured that someone would be listening if we did.
And finally, we don't often feature commercials as our video of the week, but this week we think it's worth making an exception. This French ad for bottled water uses clever CGI and a tune called Rapper's Delight by Dan the Automator to turn babies into accomplished hip-hop roller artists. It's had more than 8 million hits on the web, and we're assured that no babies were harmed in the making of our internet video of the week. See you next time at The Listening Post.
Come on, say the hip hop, the hit it to the hip hip hop, you don't stop the rocket to the bang bang boogie. Say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to beat.
Now what you hear is not a test. I'm rocking to the beat, and me, the groove, and my friends are gonna try to move your feet. See, I am Wonder Mike, and I'd like to say hello. Bang bang boogie to the boogie, the up jump the boogie to the bang bang boogie. Let's rock. You don't stop. Rock the rhythm that'll make your body rock. Real soon, you heard my voice, so then I brought 2 friends along. And next on the mic is my man Hank. Come on, come and sing that song, that song.